Sometimes I catch these mainstream media shows live, and sometimes I catch them because I record a bunch of them and then review them either that night or the next day. This particular one I happen to catch live, and I'm making this video immediately instead of scanning everything else because this one kind of pissed me off. President Obama needs to sit his non-fighting, non-leading ass down and shut up. Now, for those of you who are Democrats out there, you might not appreciate what I just said. And for those of you who are Republicans, you may just love it. And the independents, you fall wherever you fall. But this is the reason why I basically think that Obama should just shut up and finish out his next 2 months. Number one, he has not been that good of a leader. Why do I say that? Well, it's not hard for a leader when he's got all the cards to play his hand, because he's got all the cards. But it's a leader who can get stuff done no matter what the opposition is when he doesn't have all the cards. Now, a bunch of you were going to say, well, yeah, Obama, he tried to reach compromises with the Republicans and they didn't want to do it. Yeah, and in some cases you are right. But at the same time, Obama didn't know the game that he should have known. He should have known that there are alliances everywhere, and he should have realized that as soon as the Republicans got any type of power or authority, that they were going to try to work against them. He should have known that, because a lot of us knew that. But that being said, he got done whatever the hell he got done 2009 and through 2010 when he had both houses of Congress. But the election of 2010 should have told him something. The Democrats got their asses kicked in 2010, and that's when the Tea Party showed up. And with all the rhetoric that was going around, you can't tell me that he didn't know that this was going to be a faction within the Republican Party that was going to be a problem. But at the same time, after the results of the 2010 election, he should have realized that he needed to boost his base and get Democrats back into Congress in order to get something accomplished in the 2012 election. But what did he do? Not a damn thing. Now, I lay a lot of this, and I think I've done a video on this before, I lay a lot of the position that the Democrats are in at this moment at his feet. At his feet, at his ankles, at his knees, at his hips, at his shoulders, up to his neck. Because he was the official leader of the Democratic Party. And anybody could see that the way that things were going and what was specifically going on in the governorships and the legislatures of the state houses, that something had to be done in order to get the Democratic numbers back up. But what did he do? Well, in 2010, he appointed Tim Kaine as the leader of the DNC. That was an unmitigated disaster. A disaster. That was so goddamn bad that Tim Kaine resigned as chairman of the Democratic National Committee. So, what does Obama do? Does he go out there and get somebody that's gung-ho and is going to be working to rebuild? No. He goes and gets one of Clinton's buddies, Daddy Wasserman Schultz, to lead the DNC. Well, what the hell did she do in 6 years? She presided over 6 of the worst years possibly in the history of the Democratic Party. The number of governorships continued to decline. The number of state legislatures in Democratic control continued to decline. The number of members in the House of Representatives continued to decline. And they ended up losing the Senate. So what sage wisdom does Barack Obama possess? Because he basically was going to hand Clinton over, as it turns out, a House of Representatives that was still in full control of the Republicans, and a Senate that, as it turned out, was still in full control of the Republicans. So he basically did shit for the Democratic Party and shit for Clinton. Clinton was going to have a big goddamn problem. She was going to have to fight for at least the next 2 years, if not 4 years. And we were going to continue to see gridlock as far as government was concerned. Now, everybody's talking about it's time for new blood. It's time for a fresh set of eyes and a fresh set of hands as far as the leadership of the Democratic Party is concerned. Barack Obama disagrees with you and me and everybody else. He believes that he should still be the de facto leader of the Democratic Party, and that's bullshit. He's already thrown his support behind Nancy Pelosi. And I really don't have, too much bad to say about Nancy Pelosi. When she was a leader, and even as the minority leader in the House, she was fairly effective, okay? Being a minority leader, there's only so much that you can do in the House. But she, along with a bunch of the other Democrats in the House, in positions of authority, they forgot about middle America. They thought that they could get over pretty much by controlling both coasts, and they thought that they had control of the Midwest, which they didn't. Looking at the Senate, they had all of these delusions of grandeur about taking the Senate back over, and actually, if they had done their job, they should have. The first mistake they made was going with Hillary Clinton, which was a super weak candidate. With all the stuff that was going on with her and the damn email server that she lied about and continued to lie for 6 months about, with the arm's length situation, you may say, of the Clinton Foundation and her while she was Secretary of State, that obviously was an issue. With the speeches that she gave, the paid speeches that she was afraid to reveal the transcripts of to bankers and other people in positions of power as far as corporate America is concerned, that was an issue. She had so many damn issues that the only reason the election was close is because Donald Trump had even more. The problem was that Democrats really did not want to close their eyes to her issues, while Republicans and independents were willing to close their eyes as far as Donald Trump's concerned. But I digress. Now President Obama is throwing his 2 cents in, not even in support of a new head of the DNC. He's throwing his 2 cents in opposition to Keith Ellerson, who has major support to become the new head of the DNC. What the fuck is going on with this guy? Number one, black people are pissed off that he didn't do shit for us. Number two, the middle class is pissed off because they're not feeling the increase in their pocketbooks that they should have. Number three, he's completely ignored the people that have been left behind by the globalization that has been going on. So he basically has been pretty much blind. Now, again, in my opinion, he needs to sit down, shut the fuck up, do his last 2 months in office in whatever you do in your last 2 months of office. He probably needs the coffee break and just handle emergencies and stuff like that. But other than that, nothing else is going to go on. Congress isn't in recess. Executive orders aren't going to do it because they're just going to get reversed as soon as Trump gets in. He failed as far as being able to get enough people into Congress that would have at least been able to maintain some of what he calls his signature accomplishments. So, other than being the first black president of the United States, his history is not going to show a heck of a lot unless Donald Trump decides to be magnanimous and not reverse pretty much everything that he's done. But the one key problem that I see here that cannot be reversed is that he's given the Republicans the opportunity to stack the Supreme Court, which will have an effect for the next 25 years. All right, here's the clip from Chris Hayes regarding Obama sticking his nose in where it really shouldn't belong.
It is fair to say Minnesota Congressman Keith Ellerson, now the frontrunner to be the next chairman of the Democratic National Committee, with public support from Chuck Schumer, the incoming Senate Minority Leader, and from Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, whom Ellerson supported for president during the primary. But according to a report by the New York Times, Ellerson may not have the backing of the top Democrat in the country. The Times reports that President Obama's loyalists, uneasy with the progressive Mr. Ellerson, have begun casting about for an alternative.
Now, translation, Obama put out the word that he wanted his people to state that they weren't going to back Ellerson and that he really wasn't backing Ellerson and he wanted somebody else in that job. You know something, President Obama? Fuck you. With all due respect, fuck you. Because you haven't shown any type of ability as far as being a leader of the party and being able to get people to follow you.
And setting off another battle in the ongoing Democratic Civil War. Joining me now, Michelle Goldberg, columnist at Slate, and MSNBC political analyst Nina Turner, a former Ohio State senator. And Nina, I would imagine the fact that you spent a lot of time on the trail as a surrogate for Bernie Sanders and know Keith Ellerson, you're behind his candidacy. My question is how you reacted to all these anonymous quotes from the Obama circle basically saying he's not the man for the job.
I'm surprised, Chris, that they're taking that kind of interest. And maybe I shouldn't be surprised because Democrats have been losing ground in this country since 2010 and 2014. We got handed both times. So I wish that the people who are eliciting such concern about the leadership, possible leadership of Congressman Keith Ellerson, would have had that same concern as Democrats has started to erode, our connection to the people have been eroding, especially on the state level of government and governor's mansions.
Yeah, okay, and that specifically goes to Obama and his leadership.
Yeah, I mean, Michelle, it is, the point I just made about the map, it's such a crazy one to think about, right? That, like, the Obama team put together this incredible thing that no Democrat had done since FDR, which was 2 consecutive elections with the majority of the country. It's been since FDR. That's an unbelievable, monumental...
And now we've had 3 consecutive elections with the majority of the country.
That's right. It's an unbelievable political achievement. And at the same time, the Democratic Party at state level, state legislatures, state houses, and we saw in the Electoral College in this race, has completely desiccated.
Well, right. I mean, and part of this is because the geographic sorting of the country is coupled with systems at both the state level and obviously at the national level that they're completely prejudiced against people who live in urban areas, right? There's over-representation of rural interests at every single level of our government, and it's now kind of metastasized into a system in which a rural minority is going to essentially rule the urban majority that has now no say in their national government.
Right, and whose fault is that? That was a function of the 2010 census, where they were allowed to redraw districting lines, which gave gerrymandering a new lease on life. You can call it gerrymandering 2.0, because when the Republicans got in 2010, not just in Congress, okay, in the House of Representatives, but at the state levels, they basically redraw the lines in order to favor the Republican Party and its supporters, and to take away from the power of the Democrats and their supporters. And exactly what she said, they gave tremendous power to the urban areas and to the rural areas of the country, which geographically you can see all that red, that's all rural. And the urban areas, those are the areas that you see in blue, those are Democratic strongholds. So that map basically is red with a bunch of blue dots all over it. Whose fault was that? Say thank you to President Obama and the cronies that he stuck in the DNC, and to some extent Pelosi and Harry Reid. Nobody was saying anything about any of this, and they haven't said anything about any of this for the past 6 years.
But there's also the fact, Nina, that is, I mean, that's true, right? So there's a structural problem that's intersected with the combination of the Senate and the Electoral College. But there's also the fact that you got to build Democratic power. I mean, the job for this next chairman is build Democratic power at the local level, state up by state house, legislative district by legislative district. And you've seen it up close in Ohio. I mean, it strikes me when you look at Michigan, Wisconsin, and Ohio, those 3 states, those are 3 states that elected Republican governors in the great Tea Party backlash, whose governors hammered organized labor, who hammered the interests of the left, who did everything to disempower, and look what that ended up producing in this election.
That's right, Chris. And Democrats have to take some responsibility for this. Again, there's an African proverb that says that one should never build their shield on the battlefield. Well, it was shield building time for the Democrats after 2010. And no party wants to lose, but of all the times to lose, you lose right before the redrawing of lines. I was in the Ohio Senate when we were redrawing those lines, and Democrats, again, being decimated, because when it comes to the systemic ways in which the power of politics work, we have been losing elections. And so we have to reconnect with the people so that we are elected to office, so that we are in those positions to make the difference.
So what's the answer here, Nina? I'll come to you in a second, Michelle. But, in some ways this is shaping up as a sort of interesting proxy battle in which, like, Sanders loses the primary but kind of wins the battle for the party, in partly because I think people look around and they think, well, the Clintons aren't going to run the Democratic Party. Obama's leaving. Bernie Sanders at least had this kind of grassroots vision. But what exactly is that message? What does that programmatically mean?
I mean, first it starts with making sure that you remember the Republicans did an autopsy in 2012 that they didn't really follow, but I'm hoping that the Democratic Party will do an autopsy in 2016 to figure out what went wrong, how it went wrong, and how we can recapture is having robust conversations, is having a coming to Jesus meeting, and is making sure that we never lose sight of the grassroots and that when it hurts people of color, but don't forget about our poor white sisters and brothers too, that when they say they're hurting, we got to say we get it and not tell them that they're not. So we got to listen more, Chris. I think that is the beginning of this change, is to listen to the people.
It's interesting she mentions the autopsy. Well, what did you want to say? I don't want to cut you off.
Oh, I just wanted to say that although it's a proxy war, I actually think that Keith Ellison is perfectly positioned to bridge at least part of that gap, because on the one hand you have...
And also, let me just throw in Tim Ryan. He's also perfectly positioned to bridge the gap. He's from Ohio. The district that he represents in Ohio is not what you would call a well-to-do district. It's one of your not so well-to-do districts where I believe the median income for a family of 4 was like $57,000, with both parents in the household working, which means that each of them was earning less than $30,000 a year. And $30,000 a year, you know, I don't really care where you live. $30,000 a year is not a lot of money if you are working a full-time job.
Bernie Sanders out there saying the Democrats need to ditch identity politics. And
He didn't quite say that. Just
he didn't say
but I think that there is a fear among some people that in this move that a kind of a purely class-based politics will kind of throw women and people of color under the bus in this attempt to win back the culturally conservative white working class. And I just keep Ellison on the one hand, he has the Sanders movement behind him, but he also is never going to work with Donald Trump. He's going to, he's as invested in the resistance as anybody in this country who, you know, I think that he will never ever forget that Donald Trump is an existential threat to his future in this country, and so he's not going to be a deal maker. He is someone who is, again, I think would approach this job as a leader of the resistance.
Yeah, it is interesting that he's sort of the middle of a lot of Venn diagrams right now, which is part of why that Time story was fascinating to me, because I thought, oh, okay, we're seeing all these different parts of the Democratic coalition come together behind Congressman Ellison, and now maybe a little bit of a wrench in the works. Michelle Goldberg and Nina Turner, thank you very much.
Yeah, there's more than a little bit of a wrench in the works. It's almost like Obama purposely wants to continue this civil war instead of getting on with the program and going with new blood that doesn't have the baggage that the establishment Democrats have. This one is going to be interesting.